evening and welcome to this segment of Solutions of Success. I'm Paula Stinnett, and tonight's topic, along with Jack Bell, is going to be scary to me.
It is a scary topic, and it's a very important topic that we need to talk about.
Drug awareness. Something that every parent has as a nightmare. But joining us this week, 3 students from local high schools. Pedro Zamorano from LFO High School, Megan O'Toole from Gordon Lee High School, and Bonnie Hankins from Gordon Lee High School. Hi, guys. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Also, we have Sheriff Steve Wilson from Walker County Sheriff's Department, Pat Doyle. He is the supervisor of the Drug Task Force, Rip Connell from Private Clinic North, and Michael Felder from Center for Hope. Gentlemen, we have some really bright kids tonight who have some important questions to ask you. Fire away, guys.
Why are drugs more dangerous for teens?
One thing, as your teenagers, we know that they learn really quickly. They are having changes in their brains because they're developing. And as a result, just as it's easier for you to learn stuff, it's also easier for your brain to become accustomed to drugs. It's not yet formed fully. It's not informed until in the 20s. And so the pathways that you form in your brain relating, I feel pain, I want relief, I want to have fun, I know how to have that, those connections in your brain are set almost like roadways that are put in your brain before the cement comes in, so to speak. And as a result, the rest of your life, you have a tendency towards that. And plus, teenagers tend to think they're Superman and Superwoman. They don't think they're going to get hurt. And why don't I try it? It's no big deal. And so they have a tendency to risk more. And their decision-making, cognitive decision-making is also in that frontal cortex area. And so they don't always make good decisions. They don't think through the long term. They haven't been through experiences that kind of make them more hesitant. And so as a result, they risk more, try more, and they get imprinted not just for the short term, but for the long term. And in addition, the effects of the drugs on a teenager, alcohol and substances, is more dramatic and long-lasting on a teenager than it is on an adult first trying it out.
Anything to add, gentlemen? Anything?
Well, I want to throw in there that, like you were talking about, they're learning. Children are learning, and they're learning together. And peer pressure is always an issue when it comes to drug use, especially for the first-time user. And of course, young boys are more likely to try things that can be a little more dangerous and risky than young girls. But there again, that peer pressure crosses the gender lines.
Pat, you're talking about peer pressure and that first-time user.
Mm-hmm.
Can they become addicted with that? First time, one time, I'm just going to try it one time with my friends to be cool and fit in.
Absolutely. The drugs that are on the streets these days are not the drugs that we grew up with. They're doing more and more studies now, just on marijuana, for instance. It's a lot more potent than it was back in the 60s and 70s. And then you throw in things like methamphetamine and heroin that are just highly addictive. And there's a very good possibility for the first-time user of methamphetamine that they're going to be addicted.
Wow.
We see.
Now, the one thing I would like to add, what Mike said, to just supplement something that when you use alcohol and drugs as a teenager, every time you use drugs, you're killing some brain cells. Every time you drink alcohol, you're killing some brain cells. These brain cells are developing. And so what we are seeing in this generation coming up is that a lot of our young people are dumbing themselves down. You're not giving yourself a chance to fully develop. And your brain is the most complicated organ in our body.
Wow, impressive. We were talking last night, Rip, about the cost of drugs now. Do you have to be a millionaire? Do you have to have a lot of money to obtain drugs?
If you are a millionaire, you will not be one by the time that you go to treatment. Drugs will eat up everything you've got. It will cause you to do things that you never thought you would do. You would say, I would never do that. If you have become addicted, and I see a lot of people coming into my clinic that are addicted, that have lost careers. They've lost the ability to think in a coherent manner because they're going through withdrawals. I think that overall, that if we would take ourselves and educate ourselves as to what drugs really do for you as a teenager, I don't think that you would ever want to touch them again.
One of the scariest things I think, Paula, is the cost of heroin, the small amount of heroin that is available now. That we talked about before the show came on. Has been in the Chattanooga, North Georgia area now for about 2 years or so, and of course it's been around forever and ever from ancient times. But in our area, we really were seeing synthetic heroin in the pill forms. In the pill mills and all of that, but the heroin that we are seeing now can be bought for what?
A point's usually $10.
Yeah.
So it's even cheaper than the prescription narcotics. that are
Lunch
on the
money.
streets.
Yeah.
Yeah, lunch money.
And that's what really I think scares us and should scare, and I know it does, all of us at the table and all parents, is that for $10, your teenager can get a hit of heroin.
How about also the spice and bath salts? Is that even more dangerous? And it's also cheaper, and we really don't have any clue from bag to bag exactly what's in there, and that's even cheaper, isn't it?
Right. It's not really cheaper, but there's, like you said, it's more dangerous because there's no manufacturing controls on it.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a single batch that is lethal, and nobody knows until they try it for the first time because it's not made in a controlled environment. But normally we're finding that stuff goes for $25, even $45 a gram.
Gentlemen,
So it's fairly expensive.
Spice is what I use in the kitchen, and bath salts, well, that's in my tub. But it doesn't sound exactly like what you were just speaking of.
It is. You have to snort it.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass this around to you guys, let you familiarize yourself with it because this is what we're talking about as being spice, and this is a synthetic cannabinoid, synthetic marijuana. And you can tell, ladies and gentlemen, by the packaging of this stuff, who it's directed for. This looks like the old Pop Rocks that we used to buy as kids.
It does.
They're definitely targeting our young people with these products.
So I don't know if we can get a shot of those, but like Pat was saying, that would appeal to a kindergartner, a first grader.
That one has a monkey on
that
it.
type of packaging, yeah.
And these are all sitting on when you go to check out on the cashier right there in front of you.
$21 for this little thing right here.
Yes, sir. So it's
Not for human consumption. Is there?
that's a disclaimer. right?
Disclaimer on them, yes.
And
You know
small
what really
print
scares
on
me
there as
most
well.
about heroin, not only the usage, but heroin is made not in a sanitary environment. Number one, and it's passed from dealer to dealer, and each dealer will take it and cut it down to something. Just within the past year, 2 years, in New York, they were cutting heroin with fentanyl, which was a deadly combination. They had so many overdoses as a result of that. So you have no idea when you're getting heroin. You have absolutely no idea where it came from or what is even in it.
Yeah, and, a lot of the heroin that we are getting has actually got body material, skin, hair from the people that were actually harvesting this stuff. And more than likely, they're not the cleanest people in the world either.
That's true.
Yuck. I believe we have another question from the teenagers.
Oh, okay. Well, you said that most, some drugs come from stores, kids have bought them from the stores. And I know the other day I was trying to check out cough syrup, and they said there's an age limit. I had to be 18 years old, and I'm not, so I couldn't buy it. Do you think if they put an age limit on just random stuff like that in Walmart, do you think it would kind of cut down on the drug use?
I think that no, it won't, because this stuff here, this spice or synthetic marijuana, just about all these packages also say that it's not to be sold to minors under the age of 18, but there's really no law saying that it can be sold to anybody until recently. And we have made some great strides in legislation to get this stuff taken off the counters in the stores. And And now our legislators have given us the ability to go into these stores and seize this stuff and actually make arrests on it. So, it could thwart it a little bit by putting an age limit, a minimum age limit on some of this stuff. And for the most part, 18 is recognized as the age of reason for an adult. So that's why they put the age limits on a lot of those things.
I was hoping we would touch on the cough syrup because there's been a lot of teens, high schoolers that have been addicted and have actually some overdosed with cough syrup.
Right.
So that's a great question that she asked, and I'm glad to hear that Walmart carded her. Really, not that she would have abused it, but there has been a lot of reports of teens just turning up the cough syrup and getting high from the alcohol and other effects of the cough syrup.
That's right.
But like her question is, even if the stores monitor your age, it still comes and boils down to the parents, because the parents will bring it into the house and the child has access to everything inside of that house in a lot of cases. Even the drugs, the narcotics, the prescription medication, the cough medication, and that's where the parents really need to step up and start educating their children and themselves about the drugs that they're bringing in. And
Most often, an initial source for opiate use amongst teenagers is their very own family medicine cabinet, and that kind of goes into this. I mean, the sheriff and various counties, including Sheriff Wilson, provides places where you can come by with your former pills and dispose of them appropriately rather than just flushing them or whatever, and safely dispose of them so that your family members will not abuse them or use them. Even loved ones or friends that might come over, they might have an issue, and you may unknowingly be a provider, and sometimes even get so sick as that there are senior adults within the family that the younger members of the family will either buy or steal from their senior adults who are having severe pain issues, and they'll take the opiates for their own use or sell them on the streets to fund another habit.
It's something that teenagers, that we have found that teenagers use drugs between 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And the parents get home, the teenager is up in their room, and the parents are tired, the teenager's out of sight, out of mind, the teenager's up in the room high, supper happens, teenager comes down, gets his plate of food, and he goes back up to his room. And the problem with that is that I think that when we stopped, and I think it's my generation who did this, when we stopped having dinner around the dinner table at night, that's when we threw the family out with the bathwater. I think that was a time where, and I would like to see society get back to that, because that's a time you get to address your children to find out how their day was, and you get to see what condition they're in. And in the past 10 years, the average age in my clinic has gone down 8 years. And we've had people come in to our clinic that's 24 years old and had a 10-year history in addiction.
And that's the way a lot of teens do, is they don't get that attention in the home, so they'll find other drug users or dealers who give them drugs and they feel like they fit in. It's kind of like how the gang members get started, is they're developing a family there, which is a bad influence on them. So you need to choose your friends much more wisely.
If parents and teenagers, peer pressure is a tremendous factor when it comes to teen alcohol and drug use. And, a teenager, would get with your parent and say, listen, the next time I'm at a party and someone offers me any drugs or alcohol, I'm going to say, I have made an agreement with my mother or my father or my parents that I would not drink or use drugs until I was 18. That is the one thing that peers mainly will respect, is the agreement you've made with your parents.
So that's a good suggestion, Rip. You were telling me last night about something called a cocktail party.
Yep.
Tell parents and teachers what is a cocktail party?
Cocktail party is that when you get a lot of your friends together, bring what you can find, whether it's a Valium or it's a pain pill, or whatever drugs you got. They have a bowl and they put them all in the bowl. Then they put the vodka in there and either pineapple juice or orange juice. They stir it together and they all serve a cocktail. It's like taking a pistol and putting it to your head and playing Russian roulette. You have no idea the effect that's going to have on you.
And some drugs, in combination, they have a synergetic effect. Instead of just being 1 + 1, this particular drug plus another particular drug increases the effect by multiple fold.
Or creates a whole new drug.
And you have no idea. Cocaine plus alcohol produces a new drug effect, which allows you to drink longer and have a longer effect. And that's one of the reasons that people combine those two. But when you have just a bowl in the room and you're just drinking out of it or picking pills out of it, it's a dry situation, the combinations, you don't know how to expect what's going to happen to you and until it's already happened.
I believe students have a question for Sheriff Wilson.
What punishment will a teenager receive if they are caught with drugs?
Well, it all depends on the amount of drugs, the type of drugs, and what age the teenager is. In Georgia, 17, if you're charged with a crime, a felony crime, at 17, you can go to adult court or be charged as an adult. And depending upon the amount of the drug, for example, if it's less than an ounce of marijuana, you would go and you could receive a fine up to $1,000 and a year in jail, which is the maximum. Or if if it was more than an ounce and it's marijuana, you could get from 1 to 5 years. And the first time would most likely be probation and drug and alcohol type counseling. If you're 16 and under, all of that's going to change, and you're going to juvenile court, and you're going to be subject to a different court. If it's your first offense, you're not going to be locked up, especially with a small amount of drugs. If it's a larger amount of drugs, you're still probably not going to be locked up. You're still probably going to be sent home and ordered to some type of counseling program. But the 17 through 19-year-old teens, if it's a lot of cocaine or a lot of meth or a lot of heroin, you could go to prison. I mean, it's very likely that you could go to prison even on a first offense, depending on the amount of the drug.
What about if you have several teens in the car that have been drinking? What are their consequences? Because a lot of them don't understand if they're just a passenger in the vehicle, they think they're safe and they can get out of trouble. What would happen if they got a carload of them busted?
Yeah, the laws have changed since we were younger, and that encompasses even the teens that are just riding in the car that have had something to drink. You can definitely lose your right to drive, your privilege to drive. It's not a right, it's a privilege, and it can be taken away from you. So any alcohol concentration, I think the minimum is 0.02, and that may have changed too.
I think that's correct.
Then you're going to risk losing your driver's license, and that's a huge privilege for a kid that's 16 years old.
And a 16 and 17-year-old can only have, I believe, and you can correct me, can only have 2 family members in the car with them, and no non-family members.
That has changed, Sheriff, and I don't know exactly what the ratio is, but it has to be, like you said, family members, I think now. They can't just ride around with their buddies anymore at a certain
16
age.
and 17, I
Right.
think, yeah.
Well, it's amazing over time how these rules have changed like that, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for this conversation, and teens. We've got to take a pause now and watch some sponsors who really care about teenagers in your community. Zach?
We're on the air 24/7, a North Georgia taste of heaven, a fun place to be. And we're your family, UCTV.
Dr. Dr. Carl F. Peterson Jr. has been practicing dentistry in the Rossville area for over 30 years. He and his professional staff will gently take care of all of your general, orthodontic, and cosmetic dentistry needs. Dr. Peterson is a participating provider with most insurance companies as well as HealthSpring and Medicaid and will gladly file your insurance. He will be greeted by his friendly staff who take pride in making sure your visit is a pleasant experience. Call and schedule your smile makeover, and don't forget to mention seeing this ad on Solutions of Success to receive a 20% discount on your visit.
At Accelerated Workflow Solutions, we provide software and training in the field of voice recognition to help make computers more accessible for both medical professionals and people with disabilities. Call us at 706-375-3007. We are the Dragon People. We are Accelerated Workflow Solutions.
Uh-oh, Dad's gonna be mad.
If you find yourself in need of an attorney, call the law offices of Robert L. Stoltz. From auto crashes to forming a corporation, attorney Robert L. Stoltz can help you through some of life's ups and downs. Call him at 858-0023 or visit his offices at 376 Cloud Springs Road, Fort Oglethorpe. The Walker County Sheriff's Office supports high school graduation. Be smart. Stay in school.
We were talking about right before break about other passengers in the vehicle. If you're drinking, do you get in trouble or not? But one thing we didn't hit on is, what if you have a designated driver? Is that person, Pat, responsible for everybody that's in that vehicle?
Basically, they're responsible for everything that's going on in that vehicle. They've got control of the vehicle. They can actually get a ticket for the people that are in the vehicle that don't have their seatbelts on. So in essence, they are responsible for everybody in that vehicle. However, you know, if you're at a party and you need a safe ride home and you have done something wrong, like drinking underage, then by all means make sure that your driver is sober completely. But that doesn't mean that the passengers are out of the woods. If they get pulled over, then the passengers are definitely going to be responsible for what they've done. So.
And they would be charged with underage consumption if they're under 21.
Right, and again, risk losing their driver's license even as a passenger in the vehicle.
Yeah, if you're found guilty, if you're under 21 and you're found to be drinking, you can lose your license.
Right.
So you designated drivers need to be responsible and understand that you're responsible for everybody in that vehicle. So that's a big responsibility.
Teens, best thing, in this mother's opinion, and I have 5, call mom or dad to come get you. If you're at a party or you're in a situation and you find yourself without transportation, call mom or dad. I'd much rather pick my child up from a party and discuss what happened than to have to pick my child up or meet them at the hospital. Your parents will appreciate that, I promise you. Teens, you have another question?
Sheriff Wilson, how many teens last year were arrested in Northwest Georgia for drug use?
Well, I can tell you I have some data, just Walker County, not in Northwest Georgia, but I looked at some data today for the year 2014, and we kind of looked at, since we're talking about teen issues, we looked at 19-year-olds through 12-year-olds, which we keep data on, which is under the authority of the Department of Juvenile Justice. And I'll just start with the 12-year-olds. There was 11 12-year-olds that were booked into the jail for crimes that required them to be booked last year, and I think that's pretty shocking to me. I mean, when we think of a 12-year-old, we don't think of a 12-year-old having to come to jail. Of course, they're not kept in the same population, I want you to understand, with 17 and older, but they still have to be processed into the jail for certain crimes, and those 11 were. 13-year-olds got a little better, or at least a little smarter. We didn't catch them. There was only 2. There were 7 14-year-olds, 15 15-year-olds, 41 16-year-olds. You can see it climbing now. 19 17-year-olds for the crimes that we looked at here. 48 18-year-olds and 78 19-year-olds. About 221 teenagers, including 12-year-olds. And the number one charge was possession of some type of drug.
Wow.
That was the number one thing. The other thing that I thought would be number 2 would be alcohol. Was not. It was actually fighting, assaults, those type of issues, criminal trespass, anger-related issues that I would call, or I would classify as anger-type issues, where they got mad, were in a fight, or stormed out, or tore something up, or broke the door off the hinges, or those type of things. Even some other scary things in here. We had a few armed robberies and dealing with some teenagers too. But that's quite a few people. This is just Walker County that was brought into the jail. So as you can see, 221 people violated the law that were accused of or alleged to have committed a crime.
Those drugs give them a little rage and fearless.
Right.
They'll take advantage of that.
Sure.
I think the sheriff will also tell you that the other crimes, the property crimes, the violent crimes, they're almost all drug fueled in this community, at least, and probably nationwide. I think our stats are, I'd say, at least 70% of all our crimes that go on in this circuit are drug related in one way, some kind of fashion.
I think that the last statistics I read in Georgia, and Georgia is pretty much along with nationwide, is that from 80 to 85% of the inmates that we have in prison today is from a drug-related offense.
That's
almost half of those are addicts. And when you send a person to jail without treatment, when you release that person back on the street, they go back to what they know best, and that's drug usage. So, education is so important among teenagers. It's so important among the adults as to what drugs are. Just because you get it from a doctor in a pharmacy doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe. Physicians, they do a great job, but physicians only have like 40 hours of addiction medicine in 4 years of medical school. So this is a really new field that's coming up where physicians are becoming more and more aware. And if a physician finds out that you are addicted, they cannot treat you but 3 days with narcotics, and then they have to refer you to a clinic such as mine, because DEA regulations will not allow them to write narcotic prescriptions beyond that. And all this involves the children too, because these people that are in prison have children that's out in the street, and it's a genetic predisposition that if you see that your parents are addicted to alcohol, to drugs, to food, there's a lot of different addictions. If you see that is the case, and you've got grandparents that also had addictions, chances are you have a genetic predisposition. Doesn't mean that you're going to be an addict. It means that you have a propensity to, and you have a chemistry makeup to go down that road. And if you're very careful, you never have to experience that.
Yeah, you can. Some people have the issue of they have genetic predisposition, but they also have the issue that they have maybe even in their social life, their family culture. They grew up that everybody in the family used, and they'd be abnormal to not use. That's
Sure.
just the family culture. So you have the family culture, you have the predisposition to genetics, and then you have other issues, and each individual is different. The way their blood chemistry and brain chemistry reacts to a certain substance is different, and you don't know if you're the one that is more likely on that first use or that 10th use to be the one who goes over the edge from just being a user to being an abuser and then on to being a substance dependent. So what the better choice is you can't control certain things. You're born to a certain family, you have certain things that are genetic about you and so forth, and you're in a social environment, maybe even at school, that's dangerous for you. But you can make choices. And by not making those choices, such as trying the substances, you can avoid adding up all these issues until you get to the point where, oh, I've got too much on me, I'm already over the edge into dependency, and now I have a lifetime of a struggle and a fight against dependency just because I wanted to risk it and try it and be social because I was uncomfortable at a party once, or I wanted to feel more comfortable talking to the opposite sex in teenagers, you know.
So it all comes down to don't make that first bad decision. Make sure you're making healthy decisions to lead a healthy lifestyle. But we see there's so many things in society that push us toward. It's cool. You see it in the movies. You hear it in songs. You see on the street when it's cool. How does that affect teenagers? Do you have some examples of that?
You do have some songs. I'm going to, with the teenagers, this is going to be my era. You may know some of these songs. But with James Taylor, with Fire and Rain, that was nothing more than about his heroin use. It was, and you have glorification sometimes of alcohol. If you ever remember the song Jose Cuervo, You Are a Friend of Mine. If you're addicted, that drug is your friend. You take it everywhere. Ask someone who smokes cigarettes. They will turn around and go back to get their pack of cigarettes. I like to drink you with a little glass, a little salt and lime. And did I shoot out the lights? Did I kiss all the cowboys? Did I start any fights? Those are things that they didn't remember. And, and it's all in the song, like Three Dog Nights, and when it says, Mama told me not to come. There are so many songs that's out there that has got to do either with addiction or glorifying drug use. You guys listen to music. I hope you can discern between what's real and what's
The Hangover series is even a glorification of a night in which they can't even remember what happened.
That's right.
And I remember, this is dating myself, Eric Clapton, cocaine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's way before my time.
Yeah.
If I may interject something here, I was on vacation about 10 days ago, and I was in Antigua. And Eric Clapton has this huge, beautiful house on a bluff. Down from that house, he has a treatment center. That is one of the most beautiful treatment centers I've ever seen. None of us can afford it because Lindsay Lohan stayed there a couple months ago and it cost her $17,000 for a week. Wow. But he also provides in this treatment center free substance abuse counseling for the entire island, free of charge. And he does that, and he said that's how he keeps his sobriety. And a lot of our counselors keep their sobriety by helping patients. And you can, keep your sobriety by who you are around. If you want to be rich, hang around rich people. If you want to be a Christian, hang around Christians. But if you hang around drug addicts, chances are you're going to be there.
But we see a lot of people that gets an injury. It's not so much the product. For example, my parents have never done drugs, and I've never seen drugs in my parents' house. But somebody gets a back injury, a knee injury, and now they start getting hydrocodone, and that's a very addictive drug.
Yep.
And slowly over time, it becomes more. Then after the injury goes away, they're still hooked on these drugs.
It's amazing that where I work with Penfield, we'll see men who are in their middle ages. You talk to them about their drug history from high school and so forth, and they have none.
Right.
They didn't get involved, maybe a little alcohol or a little this, but they have an injury, they fall off a roof, fall off a ladder, whatever, and they begin taking prescription pills as prescribed, and sometimes they begin to hurt more, and the interesting thing is that within your brain are actually things that are very much like the opiates themselves, and it helps to create less pain. But because you're taking the pills, those natural opioids in your brain, they don't have to work as hard.
Right.
And so they start depleting. And as a result, you become dependent upon the opiates, and the individual takes more and more opiates, either by legal or illegal means, may even move over to heroin, as we were mentioning earlier, because of the cost involved. And as a result, a person who, for 20, 30 years of their life, have never been involved in any illegal substances, are suddenly thinking they're okay because they're taking a prescription pill, and they're having trouble with maintaining a lifestyle. They can't be off that pill without becoming dope sick, which makes them violently ill, and they don't want to go through that. So they're not using anymore to get high. They're using to feel okay to get through the day.
Right.
And that's what you call the negative motivator. Sometimes people have a positive motivator because they want to be high. Opiates eventually are a negative motivator. I'm just taking them so I can get through my day.
Right.
And that's the reason why medicated assisted treatment, the research we've had this year, in April, we're having the American Association for Treatment of Opioid Dependence that's being in Atlanta. Sheriff, you guys are welcome to come as my guest if you like. The governor's going to open up the conference. But the one thing about, I said earlier, when you start using opiates, the tolerance starts increasing. You have to use more and more. But with medicated assisted treatment, we have medications such as Suboxone, buprenorphine, methadone, that does not cause a tolerance creep. And like I said previously, when a doctor finds out that you are using up your prescriptions quicker than what you're supposed to, and he sees that that you are doing other things, he is not allowed, he does not have a license to detox you like we do. And so our doctors are specifically trained and certified, and we can take that patient and slowly wean them off of the medication, and especially if it's early usage. But like Mike said, if you go for 10 to 20 years, it's going to take you a much longer period to get back out of those woods. But it can be done, and we're getting a lot of good progress in science about that now.
That's where a lot of that education and counseling really comes into play after that.
Okay. Teenagers, I think you have another question ready?
Have teenagers in North Georgia died from drug usage?
We've had quite a few. You may know more specifics than I do, Pat.
Yeah, I don't have the recent stats, but nationwide, our young people are dying at an alarming rate because of drug overdoses. And like you talked about earlier, Mike, the toxicity when you mix combinations of different drugs. In 2009, the first time anything ever took over automobile crashes for the
overdoses.
Yeah, and now it's prescription drugs, overdoses.
Yeah, I was looking at the figures recently, and it was ahead of indeed the accidents from auto accidents and another category of accidental deaths. I can't remember what it was. The number one of the nation was accidental deaths due to overdose, and about half of those were opiate related.
Right.
So.
And almost all the toxicity reports I've seen from the coroner's office and have heard from the coroner's office are combinations of not just the opiates, but alcohol's involved.
If you take an opiate, which is a pain pill, and a benzodiazepine, which is a Valium or a Xanax, if you were to mix those two, and you didn't have a medical degree to understand the reaction, you may not be seeking death, but you're going to achieve it. I mean, most of the overdose deaths that I know that we've had in Walker County, there's been a combination of an opiate and a benzodiazepine.
Just about every one has been that combination, and some with alcohol.
And one of the problems when it comes to overdoses is that you take that person that just got out of jail, or you take that person that has been in treatment and they start to leave treatment, their tolerance level has dropped to zero, just like teenagers' tolerance level is at 0. Then when you take the same amount that you were taking, unfortunately, you will overdose. A teenager would take the same amount of medication that their neighbor would take. The reaction for you is going to be totally different than that. We had two young men. Their life ended in Ringo because of one OxyContin pill that another teenager got from his grandfather. That hospice drugs are one of the ways that drugs really get out on the street. And if you've got a hospice member, it's important that you take their drugs, and beside it, have a drug dosing schedule so you know when they took the drugs, you know how many pills are supposed to be in that bottle. And and if you could do that and someone monitor it, you could save one of your family members' lives.
Yeah.
Paula, we touched on it just a moment ago. Walker, Catoosa, and FO all have drop boxes for prescription medication.
Chattooga as well.
Chattooga as well. If if you're out there and you have some unused medication around the house, our advice would be to bring it to one of our free drop boxes. I think we have a photograph of the drop box. It looks like just a mail drop box, and the one in Walker County is located at the sheriff's office in the lobby. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The same for Catoosa County Sheriff's Office in Ringo. And I believe Fort Oglethorpe is open during business hours.
It is, and it's right inside the door. No questions asked.
No questions.
None. Go in, put the drugs in the box, go out. No questions asked. No one will ask anything of you.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Right. And Sheriff, I've taken it an extra step since we do work the entire circuit. The past 3 times I've been on the show, I guess I've put the offer out. If you can't make it to one of these drop boxes and you have unused medications, if you'll call my office, I will send somebody out to pick them up, and we'll make sure that they get delivered to these drop boxes. So.
Excellent.
Like the drop boxes, a lot of us have never seen them or don't know where they're at. But what if I'm a teen at school and you have a school officer there? These teens need to be reassured, like, I found this drug here on school campus and I can turn it in and be safe and not get in trouble.
That's the whole purpose of the school resource officer, is to form and bond relationships with those students in the high schools. And I know we've got them in all the high schools in our viewing area. We have some that go into Gordon Lee Elementary and Middle, and maybe occasionally interact with some of those students. But for the most part, we have officers on campuses throughout all of our viewing area. And one of the things that we always try to stress is that police officer, that sheriff's deputy, is your friend. And if you come up to them and tell them something, if it's not kept in confidence, then certainly I want to know about it. But if it's something drug-related like that, and you say you found something, I don't think at least I know my officer, my school resource officer, would not question you one bit about it, and would be glad that you trusted him enough to be able to come up to him and say, so and so is smoking weed over here behind the addition every afternoon between second and third period. So and so is selling hydros over here right after school around the corner. Those type of things. And you're not being a snitch. You're probably saving someone's life by letting that officer know about it.
It's the same thing as throwing someone a life preserver if they're drowning.
Yeah.
Or someone that's in trouble that you help. And I totally agree with you, Sheriff. I think that the more that we have teenagers that are responsible, that will establish boundaries for themselves and other people, that you're not being a stench. You're just helping that individual. They may not think you are at the time, but you really are.
Being a friend. Now, as a parent, and when they say mom's the last to know a lot of times, how can parents be monitoring? How can we tell if something is amiss? Rip and I spoke last night about a way to stay drunk all day. And I thought, goodness, how would someone check that? Rip, you want to address what we talked about?
there is being in our business, we know a lot about who the pain pill doctors are. We've learned a lot about how teenagers operate, more than what I would like to know. But there's a method they use with stuffing. It is, you take a tampon, you soak it in vodka, and you insert it rectally, and you can stay drunk all day long, and no one will smell any alcohol or anything. And that's extremely dangerous. But sometimes the teenager doesn't think totally through about, because their brain's still developing, doesn't think through the consequences of their actions.
So parents should be monitoring teens, watching their teenager. Teachers have to be watching for unusual habits. It doesn't mean that you're going to smell something on your teen, but there could actually be something going on that you're unaware of that needs to be checked out. Now, just the other day, yesterday, Pedro made a voluntary decision. And Pedro, you want to share?
Well, I took the test, like an alcohol test or drug test, and I passed, so that's great. And I'm gonna use it it's not just for making a decision by myself, it's just to make sure that when I need something, or from a resume for going to look for a job, they will see my record and they will see that I'm clean and I will be able to work.
Okay. Yeah, to use this to add to a positive to his resume, to his portfolio, that he's demonstrating a transparency and open. And what led us to this discussion is he went into the restroom one evening and a man went in after him at a local place and talked to Pedro about drugs. And of course, Pedro didn't tell me until we got home, and it horrified me, that thought that someone would approach him. Parents, how can we be more vigilant? What can we do to keep our children safe?
Stay in contact with them.
Well, sit around the dinner table, have dinner, as Rip said earlier.
Exactly right.
You know, it all starts in the home with the parents. It's not the school's responsibility; it's the parents' responsibility to raise those children, to have dialogue with them, to talk with them, to understand at an early age, from 2 years on, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, to develop a dialogue with that child where you can have that open trust and where you can have that, where you can talk about social issues and not only drugs but all other social issues and life in general. And so you've got to start very early with having that dinner around the table, I think. And if you can't, there's sometimes you can't, but you can find other ways maybe to interact with your child, and I think that's the best way, is just being a parent and having that child, knowing that you've got their back and they can trust you to talk to you. Just like we said earlier, one of the toughest things I know would be to call your parent at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night and say, "Mom, Dad, I've done drunk 4 or 5 beers. Can you come get me?" That really takes a lot for a child to be able to do that. I couldn't have done that, but that is the right thing to do, and to be able to have your child to know that, you're going to be punished for it, but, we're going to talk about it. And like you said, you'd rather them call you and come and for you to come and get them to go to the morgue and identify them at the morgue.
Exactly.
Amen.
It's just being open and just trying to have those open lines of communications and loving your kids from an early age.
And I really, and teenagers not going to hear me like me saying this, I don't think a teenager has a right to privacy in their room. If a parent suspects that something is going on, go in and search that child's room.
Oh, and more importantly, this is one of our greatest investigative tools nowadays. Search this thing. The kids aren't paying for it; they belong to the parents.
Yeah.
These have daily logs of every activity that these young people are doing throughout the day. It's a computer. It's got everything that they've done. It's got everything that they've talked or texted about. And if you want to know what your kid's up to, look at this thing.
Unless you're with them, you cannot see changes in behavior and see that the eyes are dilated or other things are happening. If you do not interact with a child, you can't possibly pick up on those signs. And so all of a sudden you'll be like, well, why did this happen? Why is all of a sudden the little brother's Xbox missing? And this item's missing, and that item's missing. And be honest with yourself when you see money or items missing because they may be funding a drug habit. Heaven forbid, but it gets to that point. So don't fool yourself in just thinking Johnny's wonderful and everything's fine. Be honest with yourself. When you see something's funny, investigate it.
And sometimes I wonder if parents really have the guts to challenge their children. 6 years ago, we had a program, Drugs Ask Us, that was on this station, and we warned people then heroin was coming to this area. But we also did something, and I want to do something again tonight. We offered parents free drug tests for their children. 2 weekends. We did not get one parent to bring one child to our clinic for a drug test. Now I'm going to make this offer again. Paula and Pedro came down to the clinic and we did a drug test. It takes probably 10 to 15 minutes. And it's not to see if you can catch your child. It's to verify that your child is drug-free. It gives you a feeling, it gives your child a feeling that, you know what, I have put more faith in my parents to have in me. If you're not afraid is to find out what's going on with your child, February the 14th, which is Valentine's Day, a day of love, we're going to have our clinic open between 10 and 1. The drug screens are absolutely free as long as you accompany your teenager to give us permission to test them. Then we'll be glad to test the teenager and give you the results right there, give you a written result as to what they have on board if they have nothing on board.
The one thing I want to add in terms of the parents is that 2 things. You need to make sure they know you love them. You can't help somebody who, if they think you despise them. And number 2 is when you're dealing with them in terms of their behavior, the individual child, they may have a tendency to hide, deflect, put off on others their responsibility. If you deny them the responsibility for their misdeeds, then they don't have responsibility for good deeds either. They have to be responsible for the good and the bad that they do, and they have to have consequences when it's bad and rewards when it's positive. So if you only reward and you cover up those consequences and you rescue them from those consequences, oh, I don't want to turn them in because they stole this from their little brother or so forth and so on, you're enabling. That's the beginning part of codependency, and you're helping that child towards a grave.
Accountability is extremely important, Michael. Thank you for pointing that out. And enabling a child is definitely not something proactive with the child's health. Now we're going to go to our weekly talent. Miss Maya Jafar is here with us again from Heritage High School. All right, Maya.
Sunshine, nothing but clouds, and it's dark in my heart, and it feels like a cold night. Today's a new day, but where are my blue skies? Nothing but clouds, and it's dark in my heart, and it feels like a cold night. I almost gave up, but I powered it. I can't explain. I fell from heaven. a shower now. I smile, even though it hurts, yeah, I smile. I know God is working, so I smile. Even though I've been here for a while, I smile, yeah, yeah, smile. It's so hard to look up when you've been down. Sure would hate to see you give up now. You look so much better when you smile. So smile, today's a new day. Today's a new day, but there is no sunshine. Nothing but clouds, and it's dark in my heart, and it feels like a cold night. Today's a new day, but where are my blue skies? Nothing but clouds, and it's dark in my heart, and it feels like a cold night. I almost gave up, but I powered it. I can't explain. I fell from heaven like a shower now. I smile, even though it hurts, yeah, I smile. I know God is working, so I smile. Even though I've been here for a while, I smile, yeah, yeah, smile. It's so hard to look up when you've been down. Sure would hate to see you give up now. You would look better when you smile. So smile, smile for me. Can you just smile for me, yeah. Smile for me. Can you just smile for me, yeah. Oh, oh, you look so much better when you, oh, oh. You look so much better when you, oh, oh. You look so much better when you, oh, oh. You look so much better when you smile, smile for me. Can you just smile for me, yeah. Smile for me. Can you just smile for me, yeah.
Thank you, Maya. It's beautiful as always. We have a few more minutes, gentlemen. Any further messages, anything you'd like to tell our parents, teenagers, our audience?
I would like to make one comment, if I may. If you are drinking more than what you should, if you're drinking at all, if you're using drugs more than what you should, or if you're using them at all, go to your parents. Have a talk with them, because I promise you, you cannot get better by yourself. Either you've got to go to a treatment professional to seek help. You cannot do it alone. Thank you very much.
And talking about the parents again, you had brought up the situation of what to look for. Is the parents need to be a little more invested in their teens maybe? Mm-hmm. Look for their actions. Look for skin conditions, hyperactivity, being real depressed, staying in their room for long periods of time, or locking the door.
Sleepy.
Very sleepy, or even going outside and staying in the shed, the barn. Look for those kind of issues and take a little interest in your teen. You may never know. It might be the life you save is your own teen.
Yeah, and if you're not monitoring your children's friends, then you're missing half the ball game right there.
You're exactly
Friends are
right.
a big issue.
Yeah.
They're playmates.
Right.
I would want to bring up marijuana. It's so commonly in society today accepted. I think it's almost that marijuana is accepted more than cigarettes. Even though its tar content, the rest is worse than cigarettes. But so many teens and others have bought into some society beliefs. And society's beliefs are not always right. At one time, society believed that slavery was okay. That wasn't right. Just because society says it's okay to smoke marijuana doesn't mean it's true. So if you want to lower your IQ by 8 points, if you want to be more likely to not go to college, not graduate, if you want to be more likely to live with less life satisfaction, lower income, and more likely to be unemployed, all statistical facts about people who commonly use marijuana, then go for it if that's what you're looking for. But society will say it's no big deal. I dare you to find an addict, except for these opiate addicts we discussed earlier, who didn't start off with marijuana.
I want to close by just letting our viewers know that, give you the number for the Drug Task Force. If you suspect that someone is pushing drugs in your neighborhood, in your community, we want to know about it. Catoosa, Walker, Dade, and Chattooga counties. We work, Pat and his people work all 4 counties. And just take this number down and give them a call and say, I believe, or I suspect that there's drugs being sold at this house. We got to cut off the snake's head a little bit at a time, and that's the only way we can do it, is just getting one and then maybe getting the next one and getting the next one. The number to the Drug Task Force is 706-638-5570. That's 706-638-5570. And if you can't get that or remember that, you can always call your local police department or sheriff's office, and we can put you in touch with the Drug Task Force.
No tip's too small, Sheriff.
That's right. All tips are good. If you'd like to leave a tip on our website at the sheriff's office, walkerso.com, we'll pass that tip along to Pat and the folks at the Lookout Mountain Judicial Circuit Drug Task Force. And, if someone's selling a young folk, teenagers, drugs, we need to know about it.
Okay, again, thank you, gentlemen. Be vigilant, parents. Communicate with your child. There's no more precious asset in your life than your children, and it does take a village. So everyone, please pay attention to those kids. Keep them safe. Now, next week, it's all about the Jack No Paula. What's going on next week, Jack?
Hey, next week, Paul, we already got a great show lined up. I'm going to have Dr. Tom Ford here from Lookout Community Services. He's going to have his coordinator, David Baker, who's going to talk about services they provide for the youth and teens. He's also going to bring John Brewer, who talks about the teen foster care program. And Dr. Ford is going to give you an overview of exactly what Lookout Community Services is about. We're also going to have one of my Transformers here who's lost 50 pounds and changed her lifestyle, as well as Miss Connie, who's going to come from Brock Insurance to talk about corporate wellness. So it's going to be an action-packed show.
Excellent show. I'm sorry I'm going to miss it, but we'll be back. Thank you. God bless America. And as always, it's a great day to be in North Georgia.
Good night.
Good night.
Bingo!
Make a date every Friday and Saturday evening to go to the American Legion Post 40 in Ringgold to
Play bingo.
We love bingo.
It's fun for kids of all ages.
Bingo is for veterans.
Great food, lots of fun, and money to be won.
Bingo!
Bring your family and friends to the American Legion Post 40